Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. We are in Yahaha and I wanted to use this opportunity to make a short video about the node graph that I told you guys about. So you can see this is a fairly simple space. We have a ball which is set up as a rigid object. We have some kind of small goal here which the ball is to go into. Probably should make the ball a bit less a bit heavier so it doesn't jump around all the time. But the idea is that I set up a node graph that triggers whenever I manage to finally put the ball into the goal. Okay, so far. First we're gonna make the whole goal a bit bigger, and you can see that I have set up a trigger box inside this goal. The ball has is a rigid body, and that's about the whole scene that I have set up so far. So what we're going to do now is we are going to add a node graph to this goal. You can set the node graph to a lot of different things, or for example, let's do this differently. Let's copy this, rotate it 90 degrees, and remove the box from this one. And call this elevator. Okay. So the idea is that when the ball goes into the goal, but not the player goes into the goal, only if the ball goes into the goal, then the elevator will move upwards. So what we're going to do first is we need to give this a move component, and we're going to deactivate this move component. So right now nothing happens. Player goes into goal, nothing happens. Ball goes into goal, nothing happens, obviously, because ball doesn't go into goal, and elevator does nothing. Now we are adding a node graph to the goal. New node graph, elevator goal. Done. This opens up our Visual Studio Code. We're going to open this folder, and this opens up our elevator node graph. So this is the node graph viewport, the surface on which we work. So you can see the Explorer, which has all the objects we have set, the goal, the set, etc. pp, everything here. And so you can click on the Add a Node button, or you can just right click. And what we first need is a trigger, because we want something to trigger. Triggers are generally found under events. Event is basically saying something happens, and from there on out we start our node graph. In this case we have a trigger box which is getting entered, so we do not want a property, we do not want a function, we want an event. In this case the onEnter trigger. You can see that first one, it doesn't have an input on the left side. It just has this arrow. It has V0 and V1, and it has this funny little triangle. And here's the beauty of this. You can just pull out any of these points, and then it asks you to add a node. So what are V0 and V1? One of those is the triggering component, and one of those is the component with the trigger. In this case, v1 is the trigger, and we need to add a node to this. We need to tell him what trigger is meant, or what kind of trigger. So this is a property. This is the Yaentity property, and this is the getEntityId. This basically asks, hey, something is getting triggered. What is it? And this is basically just the question of what is triggered actually, a unique identifier of the entity. We're going to duplicate this, and in this case we are going to say, hey, what is getting triggered is the goal. You can also use self if this is on the object that is triggered, but in this case we are going with the easier way, or we see with the more visible way, and say, hey, the goal trigger box is getting triggered. So now we have another outpost here, and this one has a different color. You can see that this is like a yellow greenish thing, and this is like a bluish greenish thing. So basically this means whenever you pull out something, you can only put it in a spot with the right color. So basically I can put this here, but I don't want to. Now I need to put the goal inside again, but I can't plug this into this color. Okay. What the color here is an integer, which means it's basically just asking for a value, and in this case we say, hey, the trigger that is triggered is the same, this is integer equal, as the goal trigger. So basically we're saying, hey, the trigger that is triggered is the goal trigger, and from here on out we are going for a branch. A branch is basically an if-when condition. This is basically a condition, and as you can see, the condition is already plugged in. The condition is if the triggered entity is the goal trigger, then, and to make this, to connect this, we need to connect this white dot. The white dot is basically where the program runs. So basically it says, okay, any trigger is entered. Okay. And then it says, okay, which trigger? Okay, there's the goal trigger, then condition. If this is true, then we're going to have another check. We're going to say, is it the player character? Is the entity... No, and this is v1, v0. v0 is basically... So if v1 is the thing that gets triggered, then v0 is the one that triggers. v1 is basically the one that says, hey, I am activating something. And in this step we are asking, hey, are you the player character? We are making another branch. We say this is the result. The condition is, so the condition is something is entered. The condition is, so the condition is something is entered, and then the next condition is player character. And if the player character is true, we don't want anything to happen. If it is false, if whatever enters is not the player character, false, then we want something to move. In this case, we're going into the function. Function is basically a do something. If event, this color is something happens, and the property color is I need an information, then the function is do something. Function is basically the do something. And in this case, we are going for our mover component. And we're saying, okay, we want a move speed. Whatever we want to move, it needs a speed. It needs a speed of 5, for example. 5 meters per second. And we can click another entity in here, which will be our elevator. So, right now we have set up, if any trigger is entered, check, is the trigger the goal trigger? Yes. Is it the player character? No. Then the elevator gets a move speed of 5 meters per second. The elevator gets a you also have this neat search function, which is amazing to have. Set target position. Okay, we want this to be on the elevator, and now we need to check the position in Yahaha Studio. So, one thing I encountered is you can't just copy the position. You have to like set them by hand. So basically I have to set this to 0, because if you just copy it, it gets weird. It gets really weird for some reason. Okay, so we have and we want this one to be, we want the second one to actually, the target position to actually be like 3. So we set this to 3 and we set this to -9. Okay, so now something is triggered. It's not a player. The elevator gets set to speed 5 and to a position, but it doesn't start unless we say function mover component start. And we are telling it that it is indeed the elevator that is getting set up. And this is basically what we need. This is basically the whole thing. What it does is, in theory, we hit the something other than a player enters the trigger box. The elevator goes up. That's all that happens. Okay, we are going to save this one. We're going to compile it. Compiling a success, so nothing bad happened. We're going back into Yahaha Studio. And we're going to check this out. Let's see. Okay, first check. I'm going to run into the trigger box. Nothing happens. Perfect. Okay, second check. We're going to see if I'm able to put the ball into the goal. And, well, as we can see, this works. The elevator moves, but it doesn't move on the position we want it to. Why? Because I probably screwed up the coordinates. But we've seen that it actually works. Okay, let's see if we can position 0, 0, -9, okay. That would be the target position. Zero, 3, -9. -9, okay. Save this. Let's compile this once again. If you compile without saving, he basically compiles an empty sheet, so you should always save before you compile. I learned that from someone who is much better than me at this. Okay, let's see if it works this time. So again, I'm going to run through this, nothing happens. We're going to shoot the ball into this. Or not. I think I need to restart. And it moves. It doesn't move where I want it to, but it moves in general. So I'll probably have to reset the, or recheck the values for the whole thing, but in general it does what it is supposed to do. But it only works once, apparently. But yeah, this is the this is how I this is a basic setup for the node graph. Again, you start with any kind of event. Event is basically a trigger. There's a lot of events like on hit enter, on trigger exit, on contact, on contact. So basically the same triggers we have here. Yeah, if I check out this move component. Yeah, touched by player, on enter, on exit, insufficient healths, others. Yeah, not everything is yet in the API, but there's a lot of stuff here. For example, a player joins, the player leaves your game. A player is invited to a group. You can do a you can do basically an event that says, hey, the group number changes, and go from there. Wait, this is, yeah. You can say something starts moving. For example, we can say, okay, the elevator starts moving, and this makes this lets something else happen. But yeah, this is the basic idea of how the node graphing works. And I hope this video inspires you to use this or try this out, and please don't ask me any questions. I know nothing. I'm still learning this myself. Nothing. Thanks for watching, and I see you guys around, hopefully.